back to the new norm. I'm Dr. Lou Graham, and this is brought to you by Midway Dental and Catapult Education. Today, I'll be sharing the microphone with my pal, great guy, Dr. Bruce Baird. And before I get into that, I want to do my standard COVID update. Today, as we all know, or you may be learning, the Prime Minister of Great Britain has just come down with being positive for the virus, which means, again, this is omnipresent. We know that. In addition, the US has been now become the epicenter of the virus itself. In addition, given the news out of New Orleans and how this is becoming a mini epicenter, I mean, it's exploding and probably sadly due to Mardi Gras and crowding. The latest ABC News poll shows that 9 out of every 10 Americans are now practicing social distancing, which is great. And I think we're all gonna have to continue to do this for weeks, if not months to come. And I applaud everybody, obviously, for doing that. Countries such as China, Jordan, South Africa, and Italy now have service members, aka the army in the streets, really safeguarding these countries. And this is the first time this has been enacted really to change human behavior and to have armies in the streets, the first time really since World War II in this fashion. With this said, I must tell you, we must be continuing to be vigilant in our practices. If you're going in and seeing emergencies, it's safety, safety, safety. And our last webinar and our last segment discussed more. Next week, we're bringing on Carson. We're gonna be discussing more on safety. Please be safe and practice social distancing. I can't see anything more. It's just so important to us as a profession. Okay, with that, it's Bruce time. And I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into his background, which is a little unusual for me, but his background really creates why we're talking today. He even graduated dental school before me, which is amazing. I like to interview someone who's before me. He graduated UT Health Science Dental School in San Antonio. He served in the Army. And after serving in the Army, and what adds to his real story, is he set up practice 36 plus years ago in a small town in Granbury, Texas. His practice really, I'll say, specialized in cosmetic dentistry and implants, and that's been his focus in his teachings and speaking over 30 years. But in addition, he's been a master at speaking on communication skills and the business of dentistry. And if you haven't heard yet Bruce talk on the business of dentistry, we're gonna be having a webinar with Bruce next week. And honestly, this guy walks the walk on the business of dentistry. With that, he founded the Productive Dentist Academy over 16 years ago, and it's really grown into a world-class operation. It's in all 50 states, and it's globally in 19 countries. His partner, Victoria Peterson, has grown this company along with 42 employees. So they walk the walk on this. And they have already trained thousands of dentists, many of which are midway dentists. In 2011, and the last part I'll speak on his bio, he founded the company called Comprehensive Finance. And Comprehensive Finance, of which I am a client, and I've been a client now, I don't know how many years, is really a company that allows doctors to do their own financing. We're gonna get into it with Bruce. They have many employees. They're really growing into a huge technology company, and they continue to expand nationally and globally. So with that being said, the reason I wanted to interview Bruce is when we bounce out of this crisis, and we're gonna bounce, Bruce is a forefront thinker. And I mean, you're gonna hear this. So I'm gonna dive right now into welcoming Bruce and go, Bruce, have you ever seen anything like this in dentistry?
Oh my gosh, Lou, this is, it's definitely it's the first time I've seen this. Now we've been through, the 87 market dips and the 2000 dot-com bubble. Also had, went through the '08 crisis, but nothing where we've had to social distance, leave our practice and just practice emergency dentistry. So it's very, very unique. Some of the financial situations are similar on, people losing their, life savings, or at least a good bit of their 401k and their retirement plans, and losing that is the same as the '08 and 2000, but not being able to go to work at all to create any revenue. That is
Right.
something that I haven't seen. It's just crazy. It's nuts.
And Bruce, when we get into talking about your company and what it does, I'm just, and I think it's a key point. I think with the way your clients do business, I would think many of them had cash in the bank and have cash continuing to come monthly. So with that, I would like to talk about really the company and the financing and how they work this for our audience, because I think this is what they're going to have to do when they bounce back in May or June. So let's talk about your company. And this is no commercial. I just think it's so valuable to talk about. I want to hand it over to you. Start going. Yep.
Well, I appreciate that, Lou, and basically, comprehensive finance was born out of the '08, the '08 housing bubble crash, and the reason was, as a practicing dentist, I was, seeing that patients were not doing the treatment that I was recommending, because even ones with cash were holding on to that cash, and right. I remember we're driving back, Jeff Buski, my partner, and I were driving back from Dallas. We were in a seminar, and Jeff asked me a kind of an interesting question. He just said, hey, when we're doing ortho, if we got 2,000 down, do you think we could finance the rest? And I thought, okay. And we probably had a couple cocktails like we like to do, and I'm sitting there going, okay, well, I said, well, how much do we have in it? Meaning, how much are our hard costs? And he said about $420. And I said, what do we charge? He goes, $5,900. And I was like, wow. Yeah, I don't do ortho, so I didn't know all those questions. So I was like, okay, that's a pretty big margin. That's pretty amazing. And then I immediately started thinking about, well, I happen to be a CEREC user, so I had CAD-CAM on a $30 block, and I'm charging $1,300 for a crown, and I'm letting people walk out the door. And yet my hard costs are only $30. So
right.
That's when I got home, I started realizing I'm a kind of an Excel spreadsheet guy. And so I probably didn't sleep for at least 48 hours, because I was literally running these business models. And I looked at it and I said, this can't be correct. If we charge, the reason we've never done our own financing is there's really three reasons. Number one, we don't know how. I don't know how to charge people interest in the state of Texas. I don't know how to do
right.
that. Number two, we've been told from the podium, which including myself, don't be the bank, just let the bank be the bank.
Right.
The care credits, the green skies, and I mean they have there's a need for that in the marketplace. And the third and the biggest one was, well, what if they don't pay me? And I do this work and they don't end up paying me. That obviously that's a big problem. Well, I started looking at it and I started running interest models, and all of a sudden I realized the offset. I mean, you would have to have a 30 or 40% default rate to not be able to make money doing this, just because the interest offsets the risk, and banks know that. And I also knew that we weren't putting up our cash; we were putting up time. And I'm a right. big, with believer in time value, because that's what we teach at Productive Dentist Academy. It's about, what's your productivity per hour, and the average dentist is about $425 an hour. Well, by using compassionate finance and by using communication skills, I mean, we work with dentists to get them up to $1,000, $1,500 an hour. That's not unusual, but the financing was the big part. And I was talking to Gordon Christensen, and he was saying, well, 90% of all crowns that are done in the U.S. are done one at a time. And I was like, really? And I started thinking about, well, why is that? Why do they do one at a time? And Howard Ferrand told me, he said, oh, it's probably 95 out of 100. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. So I started looking at across the board at dentistry, and sure enough, 95 out of 100 crowns. And the reason is, and it's kind of guided dentistry into this one tooth at a time type mentality. Because when you tell a patient they need to have $5,000 worth of work, and it doesn't matter whether it's crowns or fillings and onlays and inlays, it doesn't matter. But when you tell a patient they need $5,000, the next thing out of their mouth is, what will my insurance cover? And everybody's heard that. And you say, well, it's going to cover your team members there, and they say it's going to cover $1,500. Your portion is going to be $3,500. And the patient goes, oh, okay, well, and the average person in the U.S. only has $4,000 in their checking account or savings account, and believe me, after this situation, it's going to be less. And so they would say, well, can I just do one? And we'd say, of course, you can just do one. And that has become the way that we do dentistry across the U.S., and it's not in the best interest of the patient, because what you'll say is, and I've even said it, well, let's use your insurance this year and let's use your insurance next year and we'll work our way through this, when the bottom line is that's not best interest of the patient, because 3 years from now, that one tooth that you're watching fractures. Now you're doing bone grafts and implants. You're not saving them any money. And so a different way of thinking was, okay, what about doing our own financing? Well, I didn't want that to be Bruce Baird financing. I didn't want it to be Granbury Dental Center's financing. So that's when we came up with the name Compassionate Finance. And it started as Compassionate Finance, then it turned into Comprehensive Finance, which now that's a fintech company that we have several other several other products that we have. But Compassionate Finance, basically, we do the dentistry. And when a patient says, well, can I just do one? We say, well, we could, but why don't we do this? Let's use your insurance as a down payment. And let's make your payments could be as easy as, $85 a month. Well, now, and we can give you a pill, do all the work at one time. Well, I've never had a patient say no to that, because they want to get their work done. They just, dentistry doesn't have affordable options for them. It's either Care Credit or nothing. I mean, or Green Sky or Wells Fargo or whoever you're using. And so we're all battling across our industry. We're all battling for this top tier patient that I call the prime patient. And we think, well, it's going to be great. They have money. So we're all marketing to that same group. The problem is, who's helping the other 70%? And unfortunately, nobody is. It's just, pay half now and half, when we seed a crown. Well, now we're doing crowns in single days. So it really has changed the entire thought process of how we do case presentations with patients. And what I'll tell you is, patients are so appreciative of actually having options that they can afford. A lot of times, Lou, when I'm doing seminars, I'll say, how many people out there would be driving the car you're driving if you had to pay cash for it? And,
Exactly.
some dentists will raise their hand, and I go, yeah, okay, but what about the rest of you? What kind of house would you live in if you had to pay cash for it? What kind of big screen TV would you have if you had to pay cash for it? And so dentistry really is no different. I'm not trying to commoditize it, because we're commoditizing it already by not offering payment options. Because if you don't have payment options, then everybody's just price sensitive. Price sensitive for this, price sensitive. Well, patients are always price sensitive, but they don't know the cost of a crown. They don't know if it's $1,300 or $400. $400's too much. $1,300's too much. So,
yeah. So let me ask specific questions, because this is all about our attendees and audiences understanding why I really feel this is really important to understand. So patient comes into their office and someone signs up, a doctor's out there sign up for comprehensive finance. When the treatment plan is come up with, the difference with your plan versus, we'll say, the Care Credits is that instead of losing, let's say, 10% or 12% off the top, the doctors in your plan, they're not losing anything off the top. They're just basically telling your company is now going through the financing operations. So I think what I'd like to do is walk everybody through the difference of why when we emerge out of this, people are going to be coming to our offices and they're not going to have the dollars, a lot of them, and or they're going to be nervous. So I think this financing plan is absolutely incredible. So walk people through, how does it work? Because openly your company's doing all the billing and collecting. So walk them through that if you can in a couple minutes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Basically, patient comes in, you go through your treatment plan, you present treatment, and of course they're going to say, how much is it? And what I try to do is again, through communication skills, I give them several different scenarios, but I like just telling them what I would do if it was me. When they say, well, what will my insurance cover? Then what we say is, using your insurance as a down payment, and we have convenient monthly payments. So, and they say, okay, that sounds great. On an iPad now, you actually fill out an application, very similar to third-party financing, and you can do it on the iPad, and then they sign it, and within 5 seconds, you get back a response. And that response, about 93% of the time, is going to be approval. Now, this is very different. We always talk about people's credit ratings. They've got good credit scores or whatever. But, so credit worthiness. Well, we trademark the term payment worthiness because we go in and look at their checking history. So now we're looking at their checking history and we know, hey, they own a house, they own cars, they don't write NSF funds. And 95% of Americans really, they're used to paying monthly. They're used to having that monthly payment. So what we do is, we tell them this is it. They sign a retail installment agreement. They get to pick their monthly payment they want. We actually have an entire scenario of options for them so that they can say, a patient might say, well, I think I can do $300 a month. And that happens to equate to, 42 months worth of financing. And I'll usually tell them, well, you could do 300. Why don't we just do 200? And I want it to be easy for them to get the work done. It also allows them a little more time to pay. On the other flips coin, as a businessman, by giving them a more convenient payment, the offset in risk is because I'm going to make more interest during that time. And people say, well, that's horrible. No, it's actually helping the patient get all their work done. What's horrible is telling somebody we're going to do your dentistry over the next 5 years and save you money. And that's just total BS.
So Bruce, let me ask you this. So when a doctor wants to sign up, and my whole point is doctors should be preparing now for this. So they're
100%.
sitting idle. We're all unemployed. So why not get ready to do this when we go back to work? So here's my first question. And you know me, I'm right to the point. What does it cost to join or to be a client? What's the cost?
The cost, we have a setup fee that's $1,500 to get started. We've waived that during this time. We've waived the entire setup fee. And that's, we've got people that are social distancing at home, but they can still upload people and get all the stuff done. There's a $199 a month fee that's a licensing fee. And that's so that you can use the software, and we actually wrote our own software, and we wrote software for one of the top 50 banks in the U.S. So it's very user-friendly. So you have $199 a month, and then you have a 0.5% of your outstanding portfolio. And the interesting thing, and the thing that I want people to understand is, a portfolio means this is paper that has been signed that is owed to you with interest, okay? And it's important to understand you're getting interest, you're not taking a discount on your fee. And for that, it's not a funded option. It's not funded today like a care credit with a 10% discount. You're gonna collect it over 40 months or 60 months or whatever it is. And patients love that. We do all the collections at Compassionate Finance, Comprehensive Finance. We do all the collections. So I'm going to use this example. Let's just say it's $10,000 worth of work because it's easy math. You always want to get a down payment to cover your hard costs. I usually tell people that's 20%. 20% because you're covering your hard costs. Meaning now everything becomes a time value at that point. I've covered my hard costs. I've had people kind of argue the point that says, yeah, but I've got my team, I've got my building, I still have all that overhead. I said, you're going to have that overhead if you don't do this or not. So it's like having $8,000 of paper that's paying you whatever the interest, but on average across the country, it's about 15.9% interest. And that's because most of these cases are subprime. And what ends up happening is the patient makes their monthly payments. It's all done through ACH checking. When they don't pay, CF's, collections people, we get on the phone, we call them, we get 97% of the people to be current within 3 weeks. So it's basically taking that 8,000, you put 2,000 in your software, dental software, and you write off 8,000 to compassionate finance, just like you write off 8,000 to Delta Dental or whatever it is, but at least you've got it over here and you know exactly what you've written off.
Right.
I highly recommend docs set up a separate account. That is their finance business. And most dentists, well, we never have an evergreen revenue model for dentistry, but this is the evergreen revenue model for dentistry, because as the payments are coming in, that account and that business is growing. And, so it's a very simple process. During this time, when everybody's sitting around, if they wanted to join, we'll give all the contact information and send it out. But bottom line is, you could be ready to go on, I'm going to call it, when they wave the green flag. I look at this as like we're going to have the Indy 500 and December 31st is the finish line, and I'm going to try to take my business, even though I've been out for 2 months or 3, I want to take my business and I want it to grow. I don't want to just sit here and have to deal with this down cycle. I know that I can grow, and I know that there's going to be pent up demand of people wanting to come in. Well, I want to give them options of how they can pay for it and how they can sign up for it. Is that kind of what you were wanting to?
Right. And so lastly, Bruce, on this subject, do the dentists, they basically pick the percentage that they want to charge? How does that work? Because obviously you want to be, how does that work?
Yeah, basically, if you look at the Vantage scores, it's different than the FICO scores, but Vantage 3.0, you've got excellent credit, good credit, average credit, poor credit, and bad credit. We call it A, B, C, D, and E. And every state is different, so there are some states that can't charge an E 17.9, but there's 38 states where you can charge 9.9, 11.9, 13.9, 15.9, and 17.9. And I think that's a pretty fair interest. If you got somebody with an A, they want to hold on to their cash, because this is the difference. You won't get many A's when things are going great in the economy, but when things aren't, even A credit, excellent credit, wants to hold on to their cash because they don't know what's going to happen. So they're going to be at 9.9 all the way to 17.9, and it'll come up when the patient is accepted. It'll come up that says patient approved, and it'll show an interest rate. Now, you can have all one interest rate. You could just say, I just want to charge 10% to everybody. I just want to charge. We have some offices that charge 0%. I mean, to me, the interest, what is understood is the interest offsets the risk. So that when someone doesn't pay, I'm not worried because I have interest coming in. I'll give you an example. The E patient, the 17.9% interest in the state of Texas, the default rate of an E is much higher than the default rate of an A. An A defaults at 0.5%, whereas an E defaults at about 17%.
Right.
But what's important to understand is that means 83% are paying a full to end of payments at 17.9. Trust me, you're not going to worry about the 17% who fail.
Right.
And most dentists, they go, oh, we had a failure. Oh, we had another failure. We're using it, but we're getting too many failures. Well, what I go back and show them their dashboard and says, you're actually collecting 106% of what you do, meaning you're not taking a 10% discount, you're actually picking up 6%. That's a 16% swing. We have some docs that are at 110% of what they do on compassionate finance that is actually getting paid to them over a period of time. But what's important for the listeners to understand is, and I'm going to use that example of 1 crown compared to 5 crowns, people say, well, I don't want to do the financing, but that you were never going to get to do those 5 crowns. That patient was only going to do one. But
Right.
now, instead of producing $1,000, you're producing $5,000. Yes, you're going to have to wait to get paid. But my goodness, if you're now 5xing your productivity, you're not going to worry too much about the 1 or 2 patients that don't pay, because I promise you, if you do loans, if you were to give money out and you were getting these defaults, it'd be a huge deal. The interest would still offset the rest, but you'd be putting money up. Now, what we do as dentists, we're putting time up. And the more
Right.
leverage your procedures, meaning a $30 block and a $1,300 crown, or a $415 ortho and charging $6,000, I mean, that's huge leverage. So, I mean, it's something that once doctors understand it, it becomes a game changer. And I tell people about 20% of your production should be compassionate finance.
Yeah.
If you're doing 100 grand, you ought to be doing about 20 grand a month. Now, what you're going to find is that doesn't replace the 20% that you're already doing. This is going to go straight on top of it. And you're going to start to create this paper. And it's really important for me to say, paper is something that has value, not like an account receivable. Yes, an account receivable has value at 30 days, but we know at 60 it goes down, at 90 it almost goes away completely, and over 90 or over 120, it's worth pennies on the dollar. This paper that's performing has value. We've actually had doctors that have well over $1 million in paper, and they have used that to refinance houses. We have one guy that paid off his house and bought an airplane. We have another, I mean, you can go down the list. One group that has built additional dental offices as their portfolio of paper continued to grow. So it can be used at a bank.
Right.
So this is a true
Hey,
asset,
Bruce,
and it's something.
but Bruce, let me just,
Yeah.
I want to dummy this down a little bit, because when patients are coming in, even for Invisalign, and they see the price tag, instead of
Yep.
literally going to an alternative financing system and writing off immediately 10%, even at a 6, 7, 8% clip, and they're financing it, you're getting all your fees for Invisalign, and oftentimes the financing can pay a substantial part of the lab bill. So I hear you 150% on this. So let me ask you, because we're really running short on time. Just touch on Abela. Okay. What exactly is Abela?
Abela is it's a new account receivable software that we've developed. We started beta testing it 2 years ago at the end of about 2018. And basically what we found, and this is, I'm going to say why first, is most offices have one person that does all of their accounts receivable and their insurance. And that person spends 83% of their time either on hold with insurance companies or dealing with insurance companies. That means they spend 17% of their time working the AR report. And so they run their AR report every week, and they start at the top, which is the highest balance, and they work their way down.
Right.
Well, one of the problems with that is they never get down the list very far, and they're only working 17% of their time. So they're trying to call, but who's going to answer the phone when you you owe people money? They don't answer, and so they spend a lot of their time in a very frustrating situation. So we know that 83% of patients, or 88% of patients, had said, we would love to have a different way of paying instead of having somebody call me or anything else. So this is a software that is bi-directional. It goes into your software, pulls out your accounts receivable, starts sending them, instead of licking stamps and sending statements, which nowadays is just a perfect thing to go in the trash can. Right. And now what you're doing is you're getting a text message or an email on your phone, which is where everybody lives. You're living on your phone. So, and it's branded for your particular office. They can actually go on and look at their invoice. They can call the office if they have a question, or they can actually pay through the payment portal that's there. They can also set up monthly payments, just like with CF, except this is a zero interest payment. Why? Work's already been done. All I want to do is get my money. I'm not worried about tacking on extra interest. This is other than that. And so it's automated. And I wanted to have a product that didn't take a piece of my collections. Some of the collection companies take 25, 30, 40% of everything they collect.
Right.
I just wanted to make it a flat fee. So it's $2.99 a month. And we have a fee to an actual fee to set up, which was $1,000. We've waived that. We've actually waived the $2.99 a month for now. So that is the only way we make revenue. So we've done a entire deal where you can use it now. You can sign up now to use it, and it starts sending this out immediately. We had, I think we had like 90,000 collected yesterday on Abela. People say it's a tough time for everybody, but there's a lot of people that still are getting paid from their jobs and their work.
Right.
And bottom line is this has really been an opportunity. So what happens is you sign up now, you get trained, and the training is not hard because all you got to do is implement it into your software. I mean, into your practice software. And we work with you on that. It might take 15 minutes. And then you can start collecting. So for the next 3 months, you can collect up to July 1st. You don't owe nothing. If you decide you want to quit, great, no problem. You won't, but if you decide to, great. And from our perspective, we know that if we can just show you how to use this, or you don't have to do much, again, and then you're gonna collect money. We collected 77,000 when we first did our beta. We have a big office. We do $5 million a year, but what we did is all this over 90. That we just wait and finally turn it over to collection.
Right.
We collected 77,000 in a little over 24 days, and that was money I thought was gone. It's free money coming in.
Right.
Now it doesn't really matter, and patients absolutely loved it. The one thing we have to be careful of is when we turn it on in an office, the phone literally starts ringing immediately. Because patients go, well, I didn't know I owed that. I didn't know I owed that $18. I didn't know I owed that $54. And nobody calls people for $54. But now they go, oh, that was where your insurance didn't cover it. And so all of a sudden, this is free revenue, free money that you didn't even know you were going to be making. And it's only $2.99 a month. I did not want to take a piece of the action. Now, in medical, we're working with some super large medical groups. Yes, that's different. Their AR is all over 90. And we are taking a percentage of what we collect.
Right.
But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that to dentistry. I'd much rather have it to where it's an augment or an add-on. And I'm not trying to get rid of that person that's doing that in the office, but I'm trying to get rid of half that AR before they even have to make a phone call. So that's what Abela is.
That's great. I think it gives our listeners an opportunity to get involved with both opportunities, if you ask me. One, to get ready, and potentially one to start collecting some way overdue money. But again, I just think both are opportunities, and that's what we're looking at this crisis as. What are we going to be doing when we go forth? So as we close up, I just want to say, first off, thanks to Bruce. He's going to be hosting a webinar, and he's going to be also covering two specific subjects. Is there a way I can prepare for this again? And he's going to talk about that. And also, how can I prepare for the pent-up demand when I reopen? So let me be clear. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. So what we want you to do is we want you to go to education@midwaydental.com. Shoot us your questions. We'll go right to the experts. I know I'm not the expert, so let's go ask the experts what we should be doing as our next step next week, the week after, and thereafter. I look forward to hearing from you.